over the fans because I ain't turning them off. It's hot. It's 95, 96 degrees and extremely humid, so it's really hot. But we're out here working anyway. I'm at my craft desk today because the first thing I'm going to do in the video today is show you guys how to make a tassel. In the last video we did this little boho owl and it had this little tassel, and I made it in the video but you didn't really see it, and I referred people back to the video before that, the front porch makeover, because I had made one there. But when I went back and checked it, which I should have done before I published the video, it was like 100 miles an hour. I know you couldn't see it. So in case you're interested, we're going to do that first. And the rest of this video is just going to be organic, and we're going to see what happens. Because I was supposed to be getting rid of my extra wood, my scrap wood, and also a lot of the thrifted items that I've had for a while. And, you know, I kept shopping. It happens. So, I haven't really used a lot of the old stuff. In fact, this chair and this magazine rack are new, but they're full of spindles. I couldn't pass them up, right? So we're going to take those apart, and I'm sure something's going to happen there. And I also have a bunch of magazine rack parts because they're great sources for small spindles if you are looking for any. And I want to thank you guys for coming back and watching my videos. If you're new here, I'm Cathy. This is Homespun by Cathy, and I build new and upcycle farmhouse furniture and decor. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. So let's hit it and get going on this tassel. So, of course, the first thing you need is your twine. I get this larger twine from Walmart. It's a little less than $3, and each strand is sort of like 3 smaller strands twisted together. And when you fray them at the end, it makes a really good full tassel. There is a smaller twine you can get from the dollar store, and I do use that as well for the handle, the hanger, and to tie them off. So first you want to start with about 6 strands of the larger twine. That makes them nice and full. And I have a ruler there, and I try to get about 12 inches in length on each one, but I'm not trying to be perfect, okay? So don't worry about that. And you even them out as much as you can, and then take a piece of smaller twine and tie a knot in the middle. And then you just trim that off. Now you want to fold it in half, and you're going to make the loop at the top. And if you look at this one, you only need enough room in the loop to feed another piece of twine through later to act as your hanger. So I know this is going to be a larger tassel, so I go down maybe about a ½ an inch or a little less than that, and you just tie another knot with a piece of the smaller twine. And then I just try to separate those pieces a little bit so the loop itself looks kind of full. I'm not trying to fray it, just separate the strands. And I'm going to leave these strand ends because I can fray those along with everything else. At this point, you're practically finished. You just have to fray all of the ends. And it takes a minute. I do it when I'm watching TV sometimes at night if I know I'm going to want to use some tassels. And this stuff can be a little bit fragile. You just don't want to pull on it really hard because some of it will come out. So once it's all done, all you have to do is I just run my hand down it a little bit and pull out anything that is super loose, and then you can just trim it off. Then you just take
your longer piece of small twine and you feed it through the hole in the loop, and now you have your hanger. You can knot that at the top of the loop if you like, or you can just leave it loose like I did. I knew I was tying this around a jar, so I left it long. If you know you're going to hang it on something small, you can just tie a smaller loop. And there you go. It's all done. I think they are really cute to embellish any farmhouse decor you have. Before we can build all the stuff we're going to build, we have to do a little demo. I have had this pallet in my shop for almost a year. I need to get rid of it. Sometimes I try to pry the boards off, but this one was cracking really badly on the edges, so I just took my circular saw and just cut the boards, and I will use those all over the place for signs, for breadboards, for the bottoms of wood totes. They come in handy for a lot of stuff. Look at the screw in this magazine rack. You never know what you're going to get, so you got to be really careful with magazine racks. Sometimes they're just glued with wood pegs, and sometimes they have nuts and bolts and screws, so I don't like to take any power tools to them. I kind of beat them apart with a hammer most of the time. Once I got those screws out of the bottom, though, it was mostly wood pegs. So, but I screwed it apart. It came apart just fine, and I'm going to use the handle in a project later as well. Now, this chair was super heavy, and same thing. I don't want to just put a power tool on it and run into a nail. But I soon found out that this was just wood pegs and lots of glue. So I took my reciprocating saw and cut a lot of it apart to get the medium-sized spindles. And then on this bottom part, I took the support out of the middle and then decided not to take the larger legs off. I'm gonna repurpose that in a future video. We're building a wood tote, and I am using 2 pieces of this pallet that we took apart. I just cut the corners off at the top after I decide how tall I want them to be, and sanded them smooth. I'm not looking to make them, completely raw. I just want to make sure they're smooth. And then I round out the corners and the edges a little bit with my sander as well. I am using the bottom of a magazine rack for the bottom of the board. I had taken this rack apart previously. So the first thing I'm going to do, which is not typical when I build a wood tote, is attach the sides. I normally attach the front and the back, but we're going to use some vintage rulers for the front and back, so I want them to be as long as the sides. So I just use a bead of glue and then my nail gun and attach these to the base. Then I put a coat of white chalk paint on this. And as I was distressing it, I realized that it was kind of bright, but I liked the fact that a lot of the wood that was showing through was gray. So I wanted to keep that tone. So instead of using antiquing wax to tone down the white, I made a gray wax with clear Waverly wax and some gray chalk paint. And it did a great job. It kind of made the gray stand out a little bit more, and it toned down the white and made it look like, a weathered piece of wood. I went ahead and attached the handle next. This is a spindle from the chair we took apart. I just measure and trim it on my miter saw, and I use a clamp to hold it in place while I nail it. This one is big enough around. I tried to get 2 nails in each side. Y'all know I don't entirely trust glue, so I like to get a nail in wherever I can. So these rulers, I pick them up wherever I find them, yard sales, the flea market, Goodwill, and these are from some local businesses in my area. And I just measure and cut, and I used those little 1x pieces to space it. And then I just made a mark on each side for the next one. I had a kind of a wider ruler, and I made sure that I cut that a little bit further in so they both wouldn't be starting at, 1 inch. And then I used the opposite ones on the other side. These vintage rulers really made this wood tote very unique, and it really, really is pretty. Going to make another tote. This one is going to be what I call a low profile tote. I'm going to use the handle from the magazine rack and 3 pieces of the pallet wood. I like to let the piece of wood dictate the size of the box. I'm using one that will work with this handle here, but if I pick up a narrow piece of plywood or a board that's more square, I just go with it. I always cut my front and back to match the length of the base, and I attach those first. And here I'm using some reclaimed baseboard trim that I have. I like to use those. It just adds a little something to these wood totes, a little detail at the top of the front and back. And again, I'm just sanding the base, not trying to make it raw, just trying to smooth everything out. So now I'm ready to attach the front and back, and I just add a bead of glue and then put in some nails. It was a little challenging to nail into this pallet wood. I normally have something at least, a 1 inch or at least a 1/2 inch. This is less than a 1/2 inch thick, so I didn't have any popping out anywhere though, so I did a pretty good job. Then I take a piece of pallet wood and mark on the side where it needs to be to cover the whole side. And I cut that on my miter saw, and then I brought it back and I made a mark where the baseboard trim starts to curve upward. I used those marks to then go ahead and cut from that point up to the top of the board at a point. It was about 45-degree angles. And again, I just sanded both of the sides smooth. And then I attached them with glue and nails. After those were on, it was time to paint. I painted this piece what I call a vintage blue color. If you watched my video, The Front Porch Makeover, my front door is painted this color inside and out, and my back door and my basement door anyway. I used it on just about all the doors in my house. That's how I used it. It's an old HGTV color called Desert Lake, and it's beautiful. It looks really blue here, but it has a grayish look to it. I sanded the handle down to raw wood, and I'm not going to put any finish on it. I'm just going to use a clear sealer on it when I seal the whole piece. and I just clamped it in place with glue and nailed it in. Once that was in, I decided we needed some feet. It's such a low profile, short box. I thought it would elevate it and make it look really pretty to have some feet. So I did have some spindle cutoffs, and I just smooth those down with my sander to make sure they're all level. And then I nailed them on. Y'all know, again, I don't trust glue. So I'm sure Gorilla Glue would hold these, but you know, if somebody's going to buy it and they're picking it up and down, I want to make sure it's sturdy. So I go ahead and put a couple of nails in each one. I normally do it from the inside of the box, but since the handle was already installed, I just did it through the bottom of the feet. These are really cute little boxes, and they look really pretty styled. I wanted to make one of these wood lanterns, and I'm going to use 4 of the spindles from the magazine rack we took apart for the supports. And I have another magazine rack board, and I just cut that in half for the top and the bottom. I normally just use little pieces of wood for the supports, but I thought spindles would make it look really pretty. I just sanded the shine off and then brought the color together with some antiquing wax. And then I lost my mind right here, y'all. I normally have a palette of white, gray, some vintage blue and black and natural wood. And I got into this green from a sample that I picked up, and I did not realize how bright it was going to be. But I just distressed it, and then I went at it with some antiquing wax, which brought out the grain and really toned it down, and it really, really made it pretty. I think it does have kind of a fall vibe, but it was 95 degrees and really humid this day, so I was thinking about fall. I took the wax on it kind of thick and let it dry for a few minutes, and kind of dabbed it off with the paper towel. And then when I brushed it, it just kind of blended it all in and gave it a little bit of a more antique look. And I think it looks much better than that bright green. So I had this little block, and I just put some antiquing wax on that as well. And I had a spindle cut off. Sometimes I use like a ceramic knob or a drawer pull for the tops. And you could even stack another piece of wood on top of that. I've seen people stack 2 or 3 pieces, but I usually just put one. So to put it together, I just lay 2 of the supports down side by side on the corners and put some glue on them, clamp it together, and then go ahead and put in some nails. These magazine rack spindles had wooden pegs in the middle, so I had to be kind of careful to not nail just smack in the middle, or I wasn't even going to get a nail in it. So once that's done, I always just turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. I can put the clamp across the top because it's nailed together, and it gives me enough pressure to hold everything together while I get the nails in. And y'all would be proud of me. I did not put any nails in the little knob. I just glued it to that piece of wood, and then I nailed that piece of wood to the top. What do y'all think? Doesn't it give you fall vibes? Leave me a comment and let me know what you think.